My name is Jay, and I got my degree in molecular biology from MIT when I was 26, and at 32 I had a whole lab that I ran. The governor of New Hampshire decided to cut our funding in a quote-unquote lack of results. The same damn bastard only a day later got caught up in a sex scandal. Well, that wouldn't be his first one, and knowing people, they'll vote him back in despite the evidence. So, it was time to do something I'd wanted to do since I was a kid. A cross-country road trip to Seattle. I'd wanted to go with my partner Chris, but they had caught the flu. So it'd be just me for the trip. I started my journey on I-95 south towards Massachusetts at 4:30 a.m. So I was driving on an empty stretch of the highway and noticed a bright falling star. Its tail was a fiery rainbow that changed from a brilliant orange hue to deep maroon, and when it eventually imploded, the cloud was phthalo blue. The incident went from gorgeous to life-threatening. I pulled my car over and threw on the emergency brake and braced for impact. It was oddly quiet, and then I noticed a slightly sour metallic taste in the air, as well as a bad smell. And then the car was hit with hurricane-force winds. The first thing to go was my hearing. My ears popped, and then I was a silent observer. I looked up at my rearview mirror and saw trees flying through the air, as well as both mirrors being ripped off instantly. Birds just went by in a colorful blur, with the wind taking them away, never to be seen by me again. And it seemed darkly comical the moment a bear flew in the air. I chuckled as I thought I'd soon be joining the said bear in the air. The wind was endless, and I was glad I didn't have to hear the sound of the phenomenon that would soon claim my soul. Then, as the wind slowly started to die down, and I do mean slowly, my hearing started to seem as though it was coming back. Then, pop! I heard the chaos as it was dying down but still powerful, and then realized I'd been crying, and hadn't noticed due to being paralyzed in fear. And after a few more seconds, it was just a slight breeze. I took a look around, and it was just half flat and half trees broken down the middle, red streaks of innocent forest creatures on the road, and that sight plus the smell and taste of the air made me open the door and just vomit up all the food I had in me, and left me dry heaving for 5 minutes. Then I either lost consciousness, or had such intense stress that I saw visions of horrible fleshy creatures that looked like some sort of hellish humanoid alien. When I realized what I'd hallucinated, I fainted, woke up in the ground, in a pool of the former contents of my stomach. I then noticed an orange liquid dripping off the leaves and pine needles, burning whatever it came into contact with. I took a coin from the floor of my car and tossed it into a puddle of the unknown orange liquid. It started by rapidly melting, then violently sparking, and finally, a small explosion. Okay, noted, don't touch the liquid. It was at this point that I wanted to drive back down the interstate, but when I looked behind me, there was nothing but pine trees blocking the road. I took my phone out and documented another coin/puddle reaction just for proof when I eventually ran into someone. I checked how much gas I had, and while it wasn't much, I just hoped for a gas station soon. Turned on the engine, fully closed and locked all my doors, put it in drive, and slammed down the accelerator. I was dodging small branches in the road at 50 miles an hour, and I had to slow down as I noticed a fire starting in the woods to the left of me. No sirens or flashing lights, just a bright orange flame that suddenly shifted into intense phthalo blue, and I braced for impact yet again. And this time I hit on the other side of a concrete bridge and was sheltered from the blast waves. Yet, as I noticed the blue flame, the taste and smell in the air intensified, only slightly though. I made a mental note of that as well. I pulled back onto the road and saw hundreds of trees down, then more red streaks on the highway. I had to see if an idea in my head was correct, so I took a sock from my suitcase and stuffed it into a bottle of bourbon I had. I then lit the Molotov cocktail and aimed towards a large orange puddle, and it burst into flames. And I noticed the smell intensify all while turning into blue smoke, but no explosion. So it must need a certain concentration to blow up. I just walked back to my car and heard a voice clear as day say, "Join with us, Jay. Become part of the one." It was at that point that I picked up a stick and started looking around trying to figure out who and where the person talking was. "Who's there? Show yourself. I just want to know what's going on and how you know my name." Silence on the other end for what seemed like eternity. Then I heard the voice say, "Fight all you like. We always win." It was at that point that I felt a cold chill rush over me, and then I had an impulse to just walk into a puddle that had formed off the side of the road. Snapped out of my daze just mere feet from the puddle of certain doom. I looked down at the puddle, and what befell my eyes was my smiling face on the same humanoid creature I had visions of. I stumbled back as I was horrified at what I'd seen, and tripped on a tree root, then hit my head on the tree root. I then suffered nightmares of animals melting to the ground with half-decayed fleshy tissue, sinew, and bones sticking out. The whole world was melting in my dreams, and when I woke up at night, I walked back to my car, and it was gone. All that was left was some colorful oil spill, then a halfway melted tire and a sizzling exhaust pipe melting into itself. What the hell? Even the highway had a sticky, sort of slimy, opaque top layer, and it was half gooey and half slimy. It seemed to stick to my shoes, yet I would also start slipping on it. I started to look for anything I could propel myself through this top layer of slime. After I had walked a slippery 5 miles, I ended up at a gas station. I saw someone inside as I was nearing the door. When I opened the door, the person was gone. In its place was the half-melted remains of what could only be that human. Half of its torso was melted into a yellow liquid, and its hair was falling off in wet clumps. It tried to raise its hand, but then its fingernail slipped off. It looked at me and started crying, I'm assuming, but there were no tears. I looked at the hammer they were using to put up the shelf, took the hammer into my hand and just looked at it, then back at the suffering blob. I can't. Please, God, don't make me. How could I ever forgive myself? Then the voice said,
"It doesn't matter what you do, Jay. He's one with us anyway."
Upon hearing that, it made me very angry all of a sudden, and I just started bashing the hammer onto the fleshy skull. It took one blow, but I was in such a rage that I hit it until it was nothing but a red pool filled with tiny pink blobs floating in orange liquid. And as I came back to my senses, I hated what I'd just done. How the hell would I ever forgive myself? I had no time to question it. I just had to move on and keep finding more survivors. It was going to be a difficult journey, as I was somewhere between Tingsboro and Lowell, at least I thought. I walked behind the counter and grabbed a pack of smokes and a lighter, walked into the parking lot and lit up a cigarette. And as I lit up the cigarette, the convenience store just started to melt in front of my eyes. I watched for what felt like hours as the roof collapsed inwards. I was looking into the glass, and that same fleshy creature with my smiling face on it appeared. I got angry after seeing my face, so I threw a rock through the window, but it didn't shatter. The rock got stuck in the window and then started to disappear in the melting glass. I just started my journey on the sidewalk and watched as the cloud melted out of the air. I watched, mouth agape, as it melted from right to left and just fell and burned the ground beneath it. When the hell was the last time I had food or water? I was really losing my mind from the stress of the past day or so. I kept falling in and out of consciousness as the taste and smell of the air was nauseating. I was starting to see a figure out of my direct line of sight. Oh my God, it was my dad calling out to wave me down. He seemed frantic, and I started to run, yet I slipped and lost my footing. And as I looked up, I saw him melt, and heard a faint echo scream through the silent town. His face melted from the mouth and then spread to the rest of his face and body. His right eye just liquefied, and the goo slid down, melting his cheekbone, burning and scarring his face. The goo just became more viscous and combining with his other organs and skin. Yet he was still trying to weigh me down, and his arms snapped at the elbow, and his screams were eventually silenced. Yet I knew he was still screaming. After 2 agonizing minutes, he was finally just a reddish-orange pile of acidic slime. At that point, the voice came back.
"We wanted you to see your father die, just to make it stick how your species, you know it, is dead and gone. Nobody who ever knew or cared about is still alive. We hope you weren't too traumatized. After all, we still need you to complete us."
I just pushed myself up, sat on the ground, staring into the sky, numb to whatever was unfolding around me. It was then I saw what I had been running from. There were pine needles, rabbit's feet, a bear claw, a melted tire, and my father's face, all in this pink-orange gelatinous blob. I started to laugh hysterically, and I lit one last final smoke. Now that he was part of the blob, I felt some semblance of peace as I rose to my feet. I was running away from you this whole time, but I should have known better. I always did want to be part of the whole. Now I can be. Finally, all reality catches up with my destiny. Finn.